And welcome. You're listening to the Beyond 50 radio program. I'm your host, Daniel Davis. Well, Barack Obama is getting into the seat of the office of President of the United States. We're going to find out whether he's able to keep on some of his promises of finding new and innovative ways for us to find energy so we don't have to have our dependence on things such as coal and oil. Well, joining us today is a wonderful guest that we've had on our program. Actually, it's been quite a while since I've talked with him, talking about a new energy movement that's actually been out there for quite a while. But why aren't we able to tap into these things? Well, we're going to let him answer some of those questions for us, and he's going to tell us what this is all about. And I'd like to welcome to the Beyond 50 radio program, Mr. Joe Garbon. Joel, thank you for joining us here on the program today.
Hi, Daniel. Thank you for having me. It's a real pleasure.
I think the last time we talked, I want to say, was probably right around 2005. How are things been going since then?
Well, I think there's been a lot of activity happening here regarding the new energy movement. And, you know, what we see is that the public now has been conditioned a bit to to now start looking at the need for some real breakthroughs in the way we generate energy. Certainly the run-up in the oil prices and gasoline prices that we saw in the last year, and then the precipitous drop have really caused people to start looking at this a lot more seriously. You know, one of the things that we see is that it usually takes something to hit people in their pocketbook to kind of jar them out of the status quo mentality and really start to pay attention to the larger scene. And certainly that has happened in our country in this past year. So we believe that the public has now been primed to start examining the need for breakthrough energy technologies.
I think what's interesting when you bring up the oil scenario is that people just decided, well, look, we're going to find other ways to get to and from work if you think you're going to stick it to us at the pump. And then all of a sudden you started hearing a little, if you will, for lack of a better analogy, sniveling and whining from the oil companies. Oh, no, we're losing money. And I said, see, that's the thing that I wish people would come to understand, is that as big and powerful as they believe or perceive these corporations to be, they're only as powerful as the consumers that use their products. You stop using their products, then what's going to happen? Well, gas prices went down, I mean phenomenally so, and and people are actually starting to seriously say, well, we need to find other ways that we can do this because it's possible.
That's right. You know, I think seeing how sensitive the price response has been to demand for fuel, whether it's here in the United States with our current economic slowdown or on a global basis, because certainly the economic impacts that started here have reverberated around the globe. I think it goes to reinforce what some of the folks who have been in the what you might call the peak oil crowd have been talking about, is that, you know, we're at or nearing a peak in the capability for oil companies to produce liquid fuel, and so that means that increases in demand cause a big run up in prices, and a fall off in demand can also result in a steep drop. So we're in this period of unprecedented volatility, and that's something that makes it very, very difficult to budget and plan, whether it's at the household level or on the city, state, national level, because so much of the budgeting for things such as infrastructure or agriculture, food pricing, transportation, all these things generally have been dependent on being able to make forecasts in pricing for fuel. So when there's a great volatility in fuel prices, it makes budgeting just a nightmare, and we've seen how that has cascaded through food prices, through prices for steel and concrete and any other number of commodities that are very important to our infrastructure.
Now, Joel, while Barack Obama was campaigning, how would you say you and usually the group that you work with work with, what was your perception about what his energy policies truly are?
Well, what we see at the New Energy Movement, which I should mention that New Energy Movement it's a nonprofit grassroots organization whose mission is to educate the public and policymakers and the investment community about the need for serious and urgent support of research and development of breakthrough energy technologies. These are unconventional approaches to how we generate and use energy. What we see with the Obama administration, the incoming team, is that there's an opening, a willingness to take a look at alternatives. Generally speaking, they have mostly been promoting what we would call the conventional renewables, and that is wind power, solar power, biofuels, geothermal. These are all clean sources of energy that we would consider conventional. That is, they've been around for quite a long time. Maybe they've seen some incremental refinements. Certainly there's a lot more investment dollars that are flowing to those different sources of energy generation. But they really aren't the category that we're talking about and advocating for, which are leapfrog advances in how we generate energy. And there's a whole plethora of different technologies that are being researched by visionary inventors and scientists around the world right now. And we chronicle quite a few of these in a recent book that I've co-authored with Gene Manning called Breakthrough Power, How Quantum Leap New Energy Inventions Can Transform Our World. What we see here is that the Obama administration has an opportunity to be educated about some of these advances that we really need to examine. We believe that every stone has to be turned over and examined for ways to generate new clean energy. We cannot depend on the conventional renewables to take the whole load because actually they're woefully inadequate to provide all the clean power that the globe demands right now.
I know, Joel, that we can go back to as early as the 1900s, and you think of such catalysts like Tesla, for instance, and what he was able to experiment and come to understand. And then as we progress through the decades, you see that, well, they've been kind of working on alternatives and just interesting ways of doing things. What are some of the things that are out there now, and how do they function when it comes to this breakthrough power that you're talking about?
Well, here, let's give a couple examples of these unconventional approaches to clean energy generation. One of these is a process that's called sonofusion. Sonofusion basically involves taking water, it's actually a form of water called heavy water, and using ultrasound to generate tiny little bubbles in the water. When those bubbles collapse, they extrude a tiny little jet of water vapor that shoots out from that collapsed bubble. And when that jet of hot vapor hits a metal foil, it implants that jet of water vapor into the metal foil and causes something remarkable to happen. And that is that some of the hydrogen atoms that are in the water, and most people know that water is H2O, with the H being hydrogen, that this remarkable thing happens where the hydrogen atoms will fuse together to form helium. And that is a process very similar to what happens inside a star, just like our own sun. And when that process of fusion happens, it releases a tremendous amount of energy in the form of heat. So in this sonofusion process, a small amount of electrical energy is inputted to generate the ultrasonic energy to create the little bubbles. But this resultant reaction produces an excess amount of heat, in excess of the amount of input energy to initiate the process. It's a remarkable process. In fact, I recently went and saw one of the primary sonofusion researchers out on the island of Kauai. His name is Roger Stringham, and I visited with Roger in November to get an update on his research. And it's remarkable to see how this one inventor, who basically has been working in a fair degree of isolation, how he has taken his prototypes for this process from a prototype reactor that weighed 20 pounds. Now, with just a little bit of extra time and effort and funding, he's brought it down to something that weighs only 20 grams.
My goodness.
It's a tremendous reduction in size and weight and tremendous increase in power density with just one man's solo efforts here. In fact, just a few days ago, Roger sent me one of his prototypes. So I actually have here in my home one of these small sonofusion reactors to use as essentially a show and tell demonstration when I give talks to various groups. And this thing's about the size of a man's wristwatch. And the remarkable thing about sonofusion, Daniel, is that a quarter of a cup of water has enough hydrogen in it to produce energy for the average home for 100 years.
Really?
A quarter of a cup of water for 100 years. That's the power density of the hydrogen that is inside water. It is utterly fantastic. It just goes to show how potent a technology like this is. But you don't see this on the front page of newspapers right now, unfortunately. You can talk to members of Congress about it, which I have done, and you find that generally they are ignorant that something like this even is possible, much less being advanced. And so one of the things that we try to do is educate people about, hey, these are real advances going on. Generally, the inventors themselves are working in isolation with very minimal funding. They need to have teams of people of various skill sets brought to bear on their projects, as well as very substantial funding. Just like we throw money around in our government right now like crazy, left and right. It's going to banks, it's going to car companies, it's going all over the place. But we have seen not even a trickle of funding going to these real breakthrough energy pioneers like Roger Stringham. And that has to change, and we feel it needs to change through education. That's why Gene Manning and I have collaborated on this book called Breakthrough Power in order to help people come to understand that there's all kinds of options available that could leapfrog where we are right now and help launch us into a new energy era.
You know, Joel, I was just thinking when you talk about how our government's throwing money all over the place except for in areas like this is a fascinating documentary that's floating around out there called Trinity, the Atomic Bomb Movie, narrated by William Shatner. And what's amazing is from the very first blast, when we first used the atomic bomb, that the government has spent more than $3 trillion since then testing and detonating nuclear bombs. And you think, okay, you focus that much time and resource to not only increasing the blast or the amount of energy that comes out of the blast for destruction, but you've also found a way to scale it down so the bomb doesn't have to be that big. And you think, how can you focus so much time and energy and financial resources in an area like that toward destruction when you could harness that same kind of philosophy, if you will, in a direction toward the kind of energy resources and things that you're talking about here?
Daniel, that is a profound question. And it's one that I and my colleagues have wrestled with for quite a while. I think fundamentally it comes down to this. We tend to embrace things that cause us fear. So what have we seen here since, let's just say, 9/11? We've had this pervasive fear mentality in our country that has caused us to do all kinds of things that basically put us on edge. It makes us tense. It makes us feel like we're constantly under the threat of attack, and it tends to thwart efforts toward things that are sustainable and that move us toward a more hopeful, more brilliant future. We tend to get focused on these things that tend to pull us down from our own personal energy and that tend to divert resources away from things that are life-sustaining to things that are life-damaging, like weapons programs. You just mentioned the Trinity Project and the trillions of dollars that have gone in to the whole nuclear arms scenario. Well, we see the same type of thing has happened for nuclear power that's used for energy generation. The Department of Energy has spent tens of billions of dollars of our taxpayer funds to support hot fusion projects that largely have been carried out by the Department of Energy research laboratories like Lawrence Livermore. That's been done by a lot of university work at places like MIT and Princeton. These projects for hot fusion have spent all these billions of dollars of our money, never generating a single watt of power in excess of the input. And yet they've been working on this for decades, and always seem to project, well, just another 10 years.
Yeah,
and we will be
10
there.
or 20 years, isn't it?
Yes, and that's the mantra, just in another 10 or 20 years. And when you look at this, you have to understand that there's a tremendous degree of vested interest, not just in big corporate concerns. I mean, we all know that an oil company, have vested interest and make sure that we're still pumping liquid fuel into our gas tanks. And we understand that type of corporate behavior because they're, what they need to do is deliver profits to their shareholders. So we understand that's the charge of a corporation. Mm-hmm. But a lot of people aren't aware that academic institutions, a lot of the mainstream science community is very dependent on the progress of their careers by having a continuous inflow of government grants for pet projects and work that they're conducting. So things like sonofusion, this very elegant, relatively simple process that I just described, that could easily be brought into the public domain as a potent new energy source with probably some tens of millions of dollars as opposed to tens of billions of dollars, something like that is considered a very disruptive technology. It's disruptive because it basically makes obsolete a lot of the research that's been done over the decades for something like hot fusion, and it feels very threatening to these highly credentialed conventional nuclear physicists who've been working on these things. They've staked careers on this type of project. And so it comes back again to fear. You see where there are obstacles, where there are blockades put in the path of breakthrough energy projects, it comes down to fear. There are vested interests all along the line that feel very threatened when you're looking at something disruptive happening. And we have to be able to be understanding and empathetic to that very human impulse. Mm-hmm. You know, we all have our own pet interests that we want to protect, and none of us are immune from that. And so, I've examined my own at times, and have said, yeah, I mean, there's certain things that I've tried to fight vigorously because I felt threatened by, and then I tried to take the look at okay, Joel, what is in the best interest of our society here? Are you willing to release the things that you feel attached to because you feel it's a threat? Are you willing to release those things for the good of society? And gradually I feel I've come around to say, yes, I'm willing to do that because there's a larger purpose, there's a larger goal, and that's the healing of a planet. Mm-hmm. And that's a large endeavor. But that's something that bonds us. It unites us as a global family, and it's part of the appeal that we try to make, that certainly I try to make when I talk to citizen groups, is look, we need a concurrent evolution in energy technology and human consciousness. It's the only way that we're going to exercise the wisdom to marshal along these technologies that are clean, that are safe, that have tremendous promise to help remediate the damage we've done to our planet, and use the technologies wisely. Instead of creating new weapons of mass destruction with some of our most brilliant minds and billions of taxpayer dollars, how about redeploying that brain trust and those public funds towards something that's life-sustaining, and that helps to create a hopeful, more beautiful world for our children and our grandchildren. That's something that I stand for now.
It's, Joel, as you talk about the idea of a fear-based society, I found it interesting, and I can't say that I remember hearing this from any other potential presidents, is that Obama talked quite frankly and consistently about moving out of a fear-based way of reacting to the world. And I thought, okay, it's finally getting out there where people say, okay, yeah, we are doing this. We're kind of running around just like sheep afraid that the wolf is in the woods or right over the horizon, so to speak.
Yes.
But now in knowing that, I noticed that at your website, the newenergymovement.org, which is the website here, is that you talk about an Inventor Booster initiative. What's that?
Right. Well, if people go to newenergymovement.org, they can click on this Inventor Booster initiative and see what we're talking about with this. What it is we have a large network of inventors who are working on projects like I spoke of with Roger Stringham and Sonofusion. There's many other inventors and scientists who are working on various types of breakthrough energy projects. What we came up with here as a way to help to materially support these researchers in their work is the Inventor Booster program. And what that is when we have donors who make a tax-deductible donation to the New Energy Movement nonprofit, we can allocate funds to make grants to support the work of these inventors. We just made the first of such grants to an inventor in the Seattle area this past May, and he's a gentleman who has a remarkable technology that uses resonant circuits in a small device that has no moving parts, and it generates more electricity on the output side of the device than the amount of electricity that's inputted to initiate its circuitry. And conventional physics, conventional electrical engineering would say, well, this is impossible. You can't possibly have more output energy than you do input energy in a process. Now, what you don't hear is that, well, you know what, you can have a process where there's more apparent energy coming on the output side, as long as the input energy is being extracted from any number of sources to provide the conversion to the usable electrical power. I'll give you an example here. We all know now that we have lots of different energies that are in the electromagnetic spectrum that are outside the visible light spectrum. So humans, with our eyes, we receive and perceive visible light. But we also know that there are light frequencies above the visible light range, in the ultraviolet range, and we know that there's frequencies below the visible light spectrum in the infrared range. Well, we can't see those, but that doesn't mean that they don't exist. We have instrumentation now that shows, sure, there's ultraviolet light. In fact, anyone who's used a heat lamp or any other number of inventions that use UV light, whether it's for sterilization or disinfection or anything, we know that ultraviolet light exists. We also know that infrared exists, because if you have night vision goggles or some other new technology, you can actually see at night with those type of technologies. So the conventional view perhaps has been that, gee, if you can't see it or measure it, it must not exist. But what we find with a lot of these new energy researchers who are showing an excess amount of usable electricity or other form of power coming out the output side of the device compared to the amount of input electricity to the device, what we know is that they simply are tapping into another source of energy on the input side that previously has not been able to be measured. Some will call that perhaps a magnetic field, maybe the magnetic field of the planet. It might be what's been termed zero-point energy, which is a quantum-level energy field that's pervasive throughout all space. In fact, it pervades our own bodies and cells and the very air that we inhabit. So the universe itself is a seething sea of energy. It's pervasive, it's everywhere, it's incredibly dense. So if we have technologies that tap into that infinite source of clean energy and provide it as a very practical, usable source of electricity, that's a wonderful breakthrough. And quite frankly, I'm more interested in the practical application of the technologies than I am in the whole theoretical side of trying to know exactly what the source energy is that's being tapped. I think it's important that we be practical and that we use the application of these technologies in a hurry here to help address some of the problems that we have on the planet.
Well, totally agreed. I know, Joel, that it's interesting that you brought up some points that a lot of times people, when they have an argument for a movement, generally there's a sense of paranoia, that fear that you're talking about, that everybody's out to get them. But in fact, when you look at the many layers that are involved in the conventional way of doing things, you come to understand why there's such a tremendous lag time. And I know that some years ago I had the opportunity to interview with a 35-year-old Portuguese-Brazilian man who actually was beginning to take a step beyond even Einstein's quantum theory, and produced a book called At the Speed of Light. And one of the most fun things about his book is how he was talking about academic convention and how they hold back and restrain and protect what they're doing. So anything new that might rattle the cage and kind of dissect them away from whatever funding or whatever theories or whatever position they may have along their peers is one of those things that really slowed down any kind of leapfrog effect for us to take, the next step. I mean, look at how long it took before people would plug into Einstein's theory versus the Newtonian way of doing things. And it seems, let's just say from your perception and experience, does it seem that the lag time is beginning to shorten now because of the awareness of people knowing that these are some of the barriers that are slowing things down?
I think so. I really do think so, Daniel. And I think that can be attributed to a few different things. One is that we now have information technology that is moving at light speed across the planet. We have the World Wide Web. And when people are using the Internet to access information on a whole wide range of topics, it makes it much easier to build some critical mass of idea that is shared and then embraced. And so old ideas that no longer serve us are more easily displaced with the new, more revolutionary and helpful ideas whose time has come. So clearly the Internet has really helped to spawn movement toward the embrace of new and timely ideas. I think also we have, in the case of human consciousness itself, I think that generally there has been some evolution in the human's ability to embrace and adapt, or perhaps even intuitively perceive new ideas. And I look at these kids who are, in their 20s, down in their teens, and even these very young ones who are being born. There just seems to be a remarkable capacity for adaptation, for quick assimilation of information. I mean, I look at what some of these 10-year-old kids do on the Internet or with some of these other technologies, whether it's an iPod or you name it. I mean, they are just such whiz kids at knowing intuitively how to move quickly as far as technology goes. I couldn't have conceived at age of 10 when I was
when we had a
there.
swanky.
Yeah, and maybe most of our Beyond 50 audience, can identify with that. But so there is a change going on. I think the human being of today and that are being born into the world really have a remarkable capacity for embracing new ideas, and the time has come to do just that. Now, I think you brought up an excellent point about the resistance that is provided by the academic interests. I mean, I sometimes use the term the lords of science. These highly credentialed gatekeepers of the status quo theories, who tend to purvey these observations of physics and chemistry as if they are laws. And quite frankly, humans don't yet know enough to be able to proclaim some observation. Even if it's been a consistent observation, we can't proclaim them laws. The best we can say is, hey, we have a consistent theory here. But quite frankly, I think it's very unscientific to try to dogmatize observations as law. And unfortunately, when we tend to get too attached to pet theories, and it blinds science to the possibilities of other theories that supersede our own, well, that's when you see scientists suddenly become unscientific. They no longer are using the scientific method that basically says, hey, real science explores. Real science is always willing to look at new data and to do the experiments, to try to replicate research that's being done that shows breakthroughs. Unfortunately, we've had a lot of gatekeepers in the science realms who have not been willing to look at some of these breakthrough energy technologies. It's been a real disservice that's been done to the public, especially when so much of the status quo research has been funded by taxpayers paid by you and me and your listening audience. We deserve better, and we have to make a cry. Hey, you got to be accountable. If you're going to claim to be one of the top tier scientists, you need to be scientific. You need to look at this data. You need to be open-minded about it and not just protect your own vested interest in your own theories and your research. You got to be willing to put that at risk in the name of advancing our society. And that's what I think, makes a real champion scientist. I've met an awful lot of brilliant people over the years, and some of them have used that brilliance more to enhance their careers than let's say they have to advance our civilization. I know which ones I tend to prefer having lunch with.
Well, Joel, this is always a great conversation, and I love that we always have the opportunity when we do to present this, to let people know out there that, believe me, there are energy movements that are incredible, but they just need more of the resource and more of the attention and more of the involvement to where it doesn't just become another ridiculous conspiracy story where they were driving, home in the dark one night and pretty soon you never see them again. But actually it's more prevalent now, especially as you talk about the youth. I mean, these are generations now that I think will dynamically transform that lag time that we're talking about to where we don't hear, maybe in 20 years we might scratch the surface of where one cow with some dung can power a fan, but that can actually happen by tomorrow, for instance.
Right.
And again, your book is Breakthrough Energy. Tell folks how they can get a hold of that and a website where they can find out more information about how they can maybe even get involved in what's going on out there.
Right. Well, our book is called Breakthrough Power. Again, Breakthrough Power, How Quantum Leap New Energy Inventions Can Transform Our World. People can take a look at the book at the website www.breakthroughpower.net. Again, breakthroughpower.net. And you can order the book there. You can also read some sample chapters and see some of the reviews, which have been very good. We're very pleased about that. You also can go to the website of the New Energy Movement nonprofit organization, which is newenergymovement.org. And there you'll find a lot of background information about the new energy field itself. You'll see what our mission is. You also can see how you can help, and as a citizen itself, with your own vested interest in moving to a new energy, clean energy era and a better world, you can see how you can help. Some instances would be to support the Inventor Booster Grant initiative with donations. You also can help us with what we're calling the Obama Transition Team initiative, which is to help get materials such as this new book, as well as some visionary draft legislation and some other documents into the hands of some 200 of the Obama Transition Team, who are in very leveraged positions to help bring about more advanced policy making that will lead to a cleaner world. Right now, most of them are ignorant of these advances that are discussed in our book. They need to become aware of them, as does our populace in general. That's why the book is written for the mainstream audience. You don't need to be technically schooled in order to understand what's going on there.
Well, Joel, it seems as profound as it was in its time that the quote from Bob Dylan is coming true, and that is, the times they are changing. And we want to thank you for being on our program today. It's been a pleasure to talk with you.
Thank you so much, Daniel.
You bet. I want to also thank the guests for tuning in today with our guest, Joel Garbaugh, the author of Breakthrough Power. Find out more about that by visiting freeenergymovement.org, and you can find out more about that and how you can get involved. I'm Daniel Davis. Thank you for tuning in today. You've been listening to the Beyond 50 radio program. Remember, live your day past halfway.